What's going on, guys? Thanks for checking us out here at Brothers of Merit. I got Taylor with me. Taylor.
What up?
What's up, man? We are in Season 2, Episode 2. And we got Grant Lockard with me and you. I said me as in us. He was a great interview. I mean, we talked about mentorship. And I really feel like, and you do as well, that the mentorship is a vital role in Brotherhood in general. Yeah, like, I think Brotherhood would have a lack of just an integral part without mentorship, because Brotherhood, I don't think, could carry on. Like, you need that mentorship role of someone starting at the top who's been there, done it type feel, mentoring somebody, and that somebody is now mentoring somebody else. And Grant hits on that in his ages, and he talks about like the years that he recommends, which I highly recommend that you guys listen to his recommendations. I said recommend a lot, but listen to his recommendations and really try to carry that out in your life. They were pretty spot on.
No, I agree 100%. I think that, we've kind of alluded to it before about, I think it was actually all the way back when I was a guest on the Evolution of Episode 3 of Season 1. We talked about like getting poured into and then parallel Brotherhood and then pouring into other people. And I think that's like the last time we talked about it, but this is like such a crucial part, I think, of Brotherhood just in general. Like mentorship is, it's crucial. And I think like, I don't know, the really cool thing for me, like I was sitting there thinking while we were doing the interview, the intentionality that it takes to do this. You know what I mean? Because it's not just you're getting up and you're saying, hey, I need you to pour into me. Or like, hey, come get breakfast. Like, I have something I need to teach you. You know what I mean? And you're intentionally going through that. And I say that in the interview, and I don't take it lightly. Like, you and Grant are two of the most intentional people that I've ever met in my entire life. So, like, hearing like that advice come from the two of you, like, who do it so well. You know what I mean? I think it's, and I think the things that like force us to be intentional, the things that don't just come naturally to us, the things that we have to like intentionally do different than just daily treadmill, that's where like the sweet stuff is. You know what I mean? Like, that's where the Brotherhood really hits the road.
That's the meat of it.
Like, that's where, like, it's easy to just text your buddy about fantasy football. Right? But to be like, hey, like he says, like, hey, I have a big life thing coming up, and I know you've been there before. Can you just talk to me about
Shed some light on it.
Right? Like, because, like, the pride that we do, like, like, it's fine. Like, hey, like, I don't want him to think I'm weak, and I don't think I'm weak myself, and asking for help is weakness, and you know what I mean? Like, it's, I don't know.
But an intentionality, as we're talking about it, for those listening that are seeking, mentorship, a lot of this, is about them. But the other side of the coin is it takes intentionality from the mentor. So if those of you that are listening to this, on your drive or working out or whatever, and let's say you're in that role, you're mentoring somebody, I'd like to commend you on your intentionality, because it also takes that. And Grant talks about like, what he does. He actually takes notes to really show that mentor that like he is listening. He's there for the right reasons. He's there to really take something away from it. But the mentor themselves, the intentionality takes you to get up, whether, is it early in the morning or after work when you're tired after a long day, to still meet with somebody to try to mentor that younger person in walks of life and in different walks of life. It takes a lot. So this topic in general was, I think, a crucial part to Season 2 starting, because as we sit here and talk about Brotherhood, and we wrapped it up in all the episodes in Season 1, for those that may be joining us for the first time in Season 2, I'm glad we started off with this as our episode topic. You know what I mean? Like, 100%. This is something everyone has to strive for, and it legitimately made me sit here and think, am I seeking enough mentorship? Yeah. Like, he had me questioning. So 100%. And that's why I say this was such a good interview, because as I'm on the other end of the table, I'm not just sitting here like shaking my head and not, okay, we're going to post this interview. I'm legitimately now like questioning, I don't think I have enough mentorship. Not me mentoring, but me receiving. Yeah. And he really hits it pretty black and white on his views, and I'm not going to get into it because I want you to hear it from the horse's mouth from him. But he really hits on the fact that we need mentorship, and don't be selfish. So I think this is a good point to just roll it into it. Let them hear it, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
We'll see you on the other side.
All right. Alrighty, Grant, what's up, buddy? How are you doing?
What's going on?
Not much. Taylor?
What up?
We're chilling in your house. We got Eli behind us. Eli.
What up?
There it is.
We just met Eli tonight. I just met Grant as well for the first time tonight, but we're down at Taylor's house. We were doing a little bonfire, and then we decided to throw a little episode down. So, Grant, thanks for coming down.
Oh, thank you, guys.
You're running a race tomorrow, actually, with Taylor, which
Heck yeah.
that's going to be fun. All 90 miles or whatever you're doing, something crazy.
Like 6.
Each. 6 each.
They just took
Four.
that to the
It's
Four of
really
you.
not that big of a deal.
It wouldn't be
Yeah.
me if I didn't exaggerate
That's
everything.
fair. That's fair.
So we're gonna talk to Grant tonight, guys, and we're gonna talk to him about mentorship. And I won't get into what he does. He'll tell you. But first,
Yeah.
we're gonna do the 3 questions of terror.
Absolutely.
All right,
Uh-oh.
Taylor, start with number
All
1.
right. Yeah. No, I'm pumped about this episode for sure. I think these are probably my favorite is when it's like just a normal conversation.
And
with
in
somebody.
person.
Yeah. And then you just
Oh,
push
that's the cool
record.
part.
And like this is. Yeah, I guess we'll intro him. I was about to like go into my whole intro with Grant, but we'll do that later. Let's do 3 questions, Sarah. Okay.
We got to put him on the spot.
Sarah, we're gonna do it quick. It's like a mad minute. We'll make it fast. So, Grant, if you had your own talk show, who would your first 3 guests be?
Oh, boy. This is bad news. First 3 guests, dead or alive?
Nah, either.
Either?
They can be dead.
Oh, man.
That would be a boring interview, but
What's that?
I'm
Well, I'm saying in the past, like if I could have an interview with them.
No,
I
you're
guess I'll
good.
go alive because that does make
Okay.
sense. I just went too deep. Oh, man. That is a great question. I'm going to start off with one that's really random, but Josh Hamilton, former
Oh,
baseball
yeah.
player,
Yep.
just to talk about his life
that makes
and
a
his
lot of
journey.
sense.
Just because I feel like he would be also pretty entertaining because that's an interesting story. So if you don't know about him, you can look him
Yeah.
up. Talk show. I gotta have some entertaining people. I guess you could have some comedians on there too, but I
Yeah.
can't think of many. This is a hard one already.
That is a tough question. I couldn't think of 3. I don't know.
Yeah, I could think of people. Then I can think of like, not top 3. Maybe I'll
Right.
just go with them. Let me think. Let me get right to it now. I would have to go. Some people are gonna hate me, but I would go all sports actually with this
That's
one.
fine.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna go with Nick Saban, and I know people hate the Alabama, but
I was shocked that didn't come out first.
yeah, I would have to have
And
a
then
sit
if you
down.
could go dead, you do Bear Bryant. So
That's
it's
probably Bear Bryant. Actually, I would go presidents if I could do
Roll
a dead
Tide.
person, but
that's fair.
but then I'm probably gonna have to go and switch that up. There's a guy named Tim Elmore that's out of Atlanta. He's a leadership guru. I would love to have him on. People would get
That's
bored
awesome.
out of him, but if you like leadership stuff, Tim Elmore out of Atlanta, Georgia, would love to hang out with him.
Okay.
I love it.
Number 2. What is the scariest thing you have ever done for fun?
Here we go. Here's one of those stories. I know we're gonna get into stories with Taylor because him and I being roommates, but. The scariest thing I ever signed up for would have been down in Alabama with a bunch of my cousins. I used to be real big into skateboarding, and one time my cousin Jeremiah convinced me to let me get pulled by his little minivan on a skateboard.
I
and
love it.
They called it sketching, right?
I guess
I think that's what it used to be called.
I think they just said
Not-
just jump on and go. Like I think I was like 12 at the time, so you just did what any of
I
your
love
older cousins did. And if you know anything about skateboarding, once it goes up over a certain mile per hour, it just starts shaking. on
Speed
you.
wobbles.
Yeah, the death wobble hit.
Death wobble.
The death wobble. It hit, so that was pretty fearful. But I can think that was probably the best time in life because you just said, "All right, let's do it."
I love it.
Right. No,
And that didn't change.
No, nothing
Right.
changes.
Like, I'll let that transition us in. We'll do 2
the
questions.
death
That's
wobble
it. That's
never
good.
changes.
Yeah.
I really wanted to ask if you had to pick a milkshake flavor right now. Go.
Milkshake, just go. Keep it simple and go cookies and cream.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Boom.
good.
Like
That's
that.
good. I wouldn't have guessed that. That's good. No, that's good. I think that last question is a good segue. So, so Grant was my college roommate. Like, we were actually just all talking out at the bonfire. Like, I randomly got paired up with him, like Brandon said. I think God probably had something to do with that, but we didn't know each other going in. And it was wild. I mean, like, preseason, like, it was probably like within the first week, it was like we had known each other forever. He became one of my best friends very quickly. And as you'll probably hear here, he's honestly one of the most genuine people I've ever met in my entire life. So we're pumped to have him on. And the stories that the the just letting people like everything about that speed wobble story, like that was our entire college career. So it didn't change much since after he turned 12, and I was lucky enough to be joined in when it was our college career. But yeah, so Grant, I guess I'll steal the intro on this one, Brandon. Usually you do
go
it.
right ahead, man.
I'll steal this. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, bring up your testimony, what you're doing now, all the things that God's doing in your life right now, and just see where it rolls.
All right. Well, first, I appreciate both of you guys having me on. Huge fan of the subject, and then a huge fan of both of you guys. As I think of anytime you have a discussion of guys joining each other in Christ is a awesome conversation. It's kind of my life now. So I guess to tell you my testimony is I grew up in a large family. Dad was a pastor, but that's who introduced me to Christ. But it was more sports is what drove everything in my life. But was saved at a younger age, and then kind of left home and went to Lancaster Bible College where I met Taylor, and that's where I obviously I just said I became a believer early on, but that's where life started for me when it came to my journey of faith. I could mention that, and I just don't want to go into crazy detail, that I lost an aunt and a grandfather in life, and that really changed my journey a lot in a negative way, in a way of anger and things like that. And so then when I got to LBC, I remember after about a year just being like, I'm either going to live for Christ or I'm just going to go live on my own and just do whatever I want. And remember going home actually after my first semester and getting back to University of Delaware, and the immediate college scene hit, and guys are drinking, guys are doing other things. And I remember sitting actually at a bar and being like, everybody who mentored me, and that's one of the reasons I want to talk about mentorship, warned me against tonight. They're like, you're going to make a decision. You're either going to do what you want to do or you're going to follow Christ. And I actually remember getting up and just being like, I'm going back to LBC, because at that time, I wasn't going to go back to Lancaster Bible College just because I honestly, not my roommate. More like I didn't go to class, so I knew I was going to have to face the responsibility of doing everything right the next time. But went to LBC, and then that's where God has taken me through a journey that I never expected. I remember graduating with my undergrad and being like, I'll never step foot in class again, and actually just graduated with my master's. Awesome. Did that. And
nice. What'd you do your master's in?
Organizational leadership.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Did that, and then as soon as I graduated with my undergrad, I became a teacher for 3 years. Realized that wasn't for me, but I still wanted to be teaching kids and coaching. Coaching is what drove me. But I'm actually not in sports anymore. Actually now at High Point Camp, in the camp scene, which I love because I get to hang out with 60 college kids over the summer and mentor them as they do summer camps, and then do that on a daily basis. Hey, AKA that's why Eli's in the room.
What up, Eli?
I'm hanging out with him. So that's where I'm at in life. I'm happily married, and then have a little boy who I love. So that's been real good. So that's my bounce around testimony, if you want to call it that.
Right. What I think is cool about the story is you were talking about you being in the bar in Delaware and realizing this just isn't my scene. Like, I want to follow Christ, and here you are now, basically doing the same exact thing in other college members' life. Like, they come to your camp, they're doing internships, like Eli we're talking about, and you have the chance to mentor them into that decision. Like, hey, I lived it. I made the decision to follow Christ, and and here I am now, and I would have never changed that, So I think it's cool now, the full circle. You're back doing exactly what, you know what I mean? So I really think that's pretty neat.
That's awesome.
And you said your camp is sort of like what ours is near here, RVR, River Valley Ranch. That's what you guys do. So kind of talk a little bit about what you do at that camp specifically, if you don't mind.
So, I'm the program director. There's 4 directors there, and I'm one of them. Kind of the young gun there. So I do a lot of the day-to-day stuff when campers or any type of retreat person comes to our camp. Outside of the rooms or food, which sounds like I do nothing, but actually when you come to camps, because people say they come to eat, and so our cook is awesome. But like if you go in the lake, go play ball, pretty much anything. If you go into the woods, do our anything like that, I'm in charge of maintaining those, which actually becomes a lot when you realize a camp and you realize there's a lake's a pretty big area, 10-acre lake, and then taking care of the grounds and everything like that is what I do. And then I'm also any retreat, like we have actually in a month we have about 600 kids that are going to be at camp, and I'll be planning that, and then a winter retreat. So it's a lot of planning.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't see that you have to plan for everything. So you plan for weather to be bad. You plan for, especially the winter, especially here in PA, because PA weather is, in Pennsylvania weather, it's just awkward. It's like one day it's 0 degrees, the next day it's 60. So you have to plan for both. So.
Yeah, I love it. So and then obviously you get to do a lot with relationships and
absolutely.
I mean that is 100% your bread and butter, and like with coaching and stuff like this. And I know the answer to this question, but so you alluded to it with the start of like your college career and how it mentors. So I guess this question's kind of twofold. If you want to call people out specifically, like who were your mentors in that time of your life? And then what role did that play? Like you told the big picture, like, 50,000 foot view, like it got you out of it. It took you out of that scene and said, this is where you should be. But like on a much like more like a smaller, relatable focus. Like what role did mentoring, older guys walking beside you in Brotherhood?
Yeah,
like
I know exactly where you're going. So for me, my dad was everything, and still to this day is the way he pastors, the way he leads. But he's very, I guess you could say old school. Like I know his answers when I call him. And I'm like, Dad, I was hoping for something different, but it always goes back to like, Grant, you're not trusting the gospel, which I love now because he's honestly just telling me the truth.
Right.
Yeah. But when I left home at 18, it was like I gotta see a little bit, and I hate to say a little bit more, and because my dad was incredible. I watched him lose a daughter. I watched him lose his dad. I watched him through that. But it was like, how do you actually live this Christian life outside of being a pastor? And I saw a very real Christian. Like my dad is unreal, unbelievable. 100%. But it was always like, now let me see someone who does this. And I know this is going to sound really shallow, which I guess at 18 I was, let's be honest. It was like, I want to see someone actually do this in a cool way. And so.
Or just like not normal. Like I've seen my dad do this like that's just normal.
Yeah.
Someone else
exactly right.
You know what I mean?
And so he put it as an example, and I guess, and honestly, this is probably credit to my dad, is he made it look mundane. So to me, I was like, oh, him just, on a Saturday night, Dad's reading his Bible. Like, that's just what Dad does, So Josh Beers, who's now the vice president at Lancaster Bible College, was Taylor and I soccer coach for 3 years. And he was instantly everything as a mentor to me. Yep. And just took me underneath, just like he did tons and dozens of guys. And he instantly took that, I guess you could say, cool factor to me. Yeah. So when he said things, I just said how high. When he said jump, I just, all right, let's do it.
That's funny. I actually, I'm going to interrupt you real quick because I actually thought of this when you said the weather thing. And then you said the Josh thing. Like, I remember very specifically a story that, like, we were talking about weather, and it was like you have to plan for where we're going to play. It would be at a game, and it was going to rain. And I remember, like, Josh said, I forget what he was talking about, but he was like if I said, like, oh, like, we have to postpone this game because of rain, Grant would have been like, oh, I'll get a tarp. Like, we can, I'll put a tarp over the field. Like, we'll make it happen.
You got to do what you got to do, man. I want to play. So yeah, Josh was the man through college for me. And definitely it was the relationship between that and actually it was kind of crazy. Repeated all the same things Dad did, but I guess you could say in a different way. So I was incredibly blessed at Lancaster Bible College to have I would say good 6 guys that I would say were pouring into me. Right. I could name a couple more, but he was probably the main guy. Yeah.
And again, I'll let you like ask you a question here, Brandon. But since I know who he's talking about, that was because it's really cool to hear that because Josh was a mentor for me as well, and to hear you say like you wanted to see someone do it like in a cool way that wasn't mundane, like just everyday life, and then Josh is the one who did that. Like how I describe Josh is Josh was just like a Christian all the time. Mm-hmm. Like he was just always on. Always. Yep. Like there was never like wishy-washy. You know what I mean? Like it was never situational with Josh. Like it was like 3:00 on a Tuesday or Sunday morning, he is just on. Like this is just the life that he's living. He's not putting on a face for anybody.
No, that's straight up.
And like that, like it could almost look like the mundane that your dad, you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yep.
And like I came from a situation where, no, like I love my dad and he was great, you know what? But like it wasn't like I was looking for something like that was different. That was the different for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I don't know, and I think it's awesome. I like there's probably a nugget in there about just how we should be living too. But
Right. So in regards to Josh and mentorship, because that's what we're talking about, you were starting to paint the picture of how Josh is, who he is. So what qualities can you take away from Josh that you could hit on specifically right now that make you want to be that type of mentor to other people? Like we talked about how he's a Christian, how deep he is in his faith, but what other qualities do you see like that's what I want to strive for every day for others like Eli? You know?
Oh yeah. The first thing would be, this is gonna sound like a weird terminology, but I say this a lot. And when I teach mentorship or even leadership, I say the phrase feet to feet, and it's actually taken from Jesus meeting the woman at the well. But I also feel like Josh did this very well to me. It was never like looking down at me. Like when I would go to him and be like, Josh, I messed up. Like trust me, there was many times where he should have just been like, dude, I can't do anything for you. Like, you just should have woke up and went to class, son. Like, I'm going to let you die. Like, you need to go. But it was always feet to feet. Like, all right, here, let me walk you through. Like, you need to go, make it right with this professor, or you need to go make it right with this individual because you went into the room really late. Because I was always the goof off, and I always went to him and I'm like, Josh, I really didn't mean to offend this person, but somehow I did. And I know as a believer, I'm supposed to make it right. But like, how do you make it right with somebody who's just angry with you? And it was very feet to feet. It was very, yeah, Grant, let's like solution driven. It wasn't ever like, man, you messed up again. Like, and he would meet literally a group of us as freshmen met in the dining hall with him, 5 or 6 of us I want to say Tuesday, I might not have the day right, but like as common could be. Yep. Like he grabbed a slice of pizza and sat down with you and we just talked, and he was very prepared about it. So that would be the main thing, was that it was feet to feet. It was just constant, like what's going on at your level, not, awesome. Oh, hey, come up to, hey. So, for example, I never heard of much about what Josh Beers' day was as a college student. Now I know it. Right. Because I'm in the workforce, and so we talk about what his days look like, but I never heard what he was doing. And if he was
focused on you,
yeah,
so much.
That, and it was never a bragging term. Like if I knew what he was doing, I would have listened more during those times if I knew how much he was sacrificing in the hour meeting me with me and the other guys. Right. Because he was sacrificing his job, his time with his family. And
those are hard things to realize until you get older. You know what I mean? Like we all sit here now as almost 30-year-olds and look back and think, I would have done this different, or I can't believe I had my attitude drive me like that. But we were 18, 19, 20. Like we all look back in things. So what's another quality you think for the listeners, like another mentorship quality that you strive to, output to others?
From him directly would have been the next thing was, we talked about leadership all the time, because that's what I'm kind of going down a path in my life of I want to create mentors that mentor. His path was always leaders that lead others. And the one thing that I really liked about him, and it's funny, when I took my master's, the start of every class was like define leadership. And it's real easy with Josh, is he just expected you to lead where you were at. And so I always walked away from his meetings because to tell a little bit about myself, loved being there and loved playing soccer, but just was the middle of the pack when it came to athleticism. I wasn't the worst guy on the team, but I also wasn't the top player. But he was also pouring into me and being like, lead where you're at. Like, I need a guy who's leading on the bench. Like, he would tell me that all the time. I need the guy who's going to lead the 10 guys who are sitting and won't play today. Who's going to lead them? And he would always tell me that. Like, who's leading the 10 guys who are not going to see the field? And he'd be like, he would literally say it to me, like, Grant, I need you to be that guy. And I'd always be like.
And Grant did it well. Like, that's a humble role to take, and Grant did it well.
Yeah, and you don't take yourself so seriously, and you have fun, Right. Like, I learned that was a huge curveball that I learned, but.
There was a water bottle that
there may have been some things thrown once in a while, but
that story I said when you look back on things.
But I just like the fact that he always taught me, lead where you're at, and that's what he did. So I take that nugget, because I think sometimes we always think, especially when like as we talk about mentorship, is we always think the person who we're mentor should figure it out already. And what I've learned, even when guys make mistakes, or I'm almost like, man, I led them to water and they didn't even drink yet. Like, what's wrong with this person? And I'm sitting there going, you know what? I'm supposed to lead where I'm at. Maybe this person isn't ready. Like,
Yeah.
All right, I'll just be with them. Like, if you're not ready to, I've taken you all the way through this process and you're not ready to step up. Like, all right, we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to figure out another way to help you step up to the plate. So, yeah.
That's a great word. And I think that's a good segue into, because it's awesome. I think it's awesome that, like, you have such an intentional purpose on mentorship, like, in your life now. And I think it's cool hearing the backstory of, and Josh is just one of, like you said, probably 6 guys that poured into you at that time. But so now, like, so with that, like what you were just saying, like transitioning into then now how you view mentorship as you being the mentor. And I'm sure the mentoring isn't done pouring down from the top into you. Absolutely. But now, like, when your view of mentorship, which is, I think this is, like, I just want to, like, pause real quick. Like, this, like, view, or this, like, I guess, like, concept of brotherhood that we haven't, like, touched on yet. Like, it's brotherhood, but it's, like, intentionally, like, pouring into people and not just, like, your buddies parallel with you. Like, it's either getting poured into or pouring in down. Like, this is a a crucial part of brotherhood that I think is awesome. That
you were stealing the words out of my mouth. Like, legitimately, I was going to say. Nice.
Good. I'm glad I got to the mic first.
It's a race.
But no, I think I guess I just wanted to transition into now like your view of mentorship and like taking that, like, what I don't really know how to ask the question. So maybe if
took the
maybe
words too quick.
I stole the words and now you can finish my thought. But like, I guess I just wanted to transition into like now, like, what is your, like, how do you, like, intentionally go in, like, for example, Eli sitting in the room. Like, if you're thinking through, like, now I have this time with Eli where I can be a brother with him and I can also, like, pour into him and I can be a mentor to him. How do you, like, intentionally, like, look through that relationship? You know what I mean? Like, how do you not just, like, wake up and just let the days happen? Yeah. And instead, you know what I mean?
Well, I think to me that's a really easy answer because
I'm just gonna let you roll.
No, you're good. No, that's a great question. Is the first thing is I look back and I realize where I wouldn't have been without a bunch of mentors. Like
That's good.
And so the first, I think, and I say this, and everyone, like, I always tell people if I speak or in chapel or anything, I'm like, I'm going to blow your mind in a minute. And I tell them this statement that doesn't blow anybody's mind. But when you think about it, you're like, oh, that's completely true, is what you don't know, you don't know. Right. Yeah. And so it's like, it's mind blowing, but it's also not, because then you're like, oh, obviously. But then you think about it and you're like, well, yeah, I don't know what I don't know. Like, I look back at the whole, and all of us having kids.
It's good.
You're almost like, what I didn't know about having kids during that time is, like, shocking. Like, you're almost like, how did I not know all of that? And then you go talk to anybody else who has kids, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's what goes on in a wife's body, and that goes on with your, she's going to go through this process. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. Like, so I think about life without my mentors, and I'm like, I'm glad they show me what I didn't know, because it's not that I'm dumb. It's not that you're dumb. It's not that I call them the mentee.
Don't know what you don't know.
They're not dumb. They just don't know what they don't know, whether it's culture, whether it was not being raised in a church, whether that was a fatherless home or whatever it might be. They don't know what they don't know. So somebody's got to tell somebody. Like, somebody has to. And I'd rather, and I am obviously a charismatic guy and all that. Like, I'm louder and stuff like that, but I don't want to be the only voice, but somebody has to beat other people to the punch. And I believe that God has called us as men to take responsibility to mentor other men. And I think there's other ways you can mentor bigger churches and other women, but on a one-to-one relationship, to show somebody what they don't know. Yeah. They don't know. And actually, if you look through the scripture, God constantly took his disciples on retreats. And a lot of times he was showing them what they didn't know. And actually a couple times he's like, you don't know this. Like, I'm going to go soon, but you don't know. Right. But please pay attention. And they weren't able to do that, which, there's a lot of reasons why that is. But you don't know what you don't know. Sure. So I sit there and you ask that question of, like, how I go about my day to day is I'm just so it's funny how you ask that question, because this whole month I've been reading on gratitude, and I'm just so thankful for Josh Beers, Bill Lockard, Jonathan Pitts, Scott Boyers, who talk to me about everything, literally from how to be a good husband to how to get back, how to overcome guilt, how to kill anger, how to kill lust. Like, you go over all that. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm
thinking of a specific lesson about gratitude from Josh. Like, like as soon as you said that. Yep. Like, no, I love that.
I like the connection between you two as well, because I don't have that. So when you guys both know him and both played under him and got mentored by him, I think that's pretty cool in that realm. So we're gonna start kind of wrapping up here, Grant. But I wanted to, at this last part, we always like to ask, like, what is your advice on brotherhood? And I think this is extremely unique because of the position that you are in.
Yeah.
Like, brotherhood is a huge aspect to all of our lives, especially as men. Obviously, we're not talking about sisterhood. Nothing against it, but we're not a podcast.
We don't know anything about it.
We don't know anything about it. So I cannot talk about that. But in brotherhood, we can. So in your role at the camp, I mean, you are literally, dealing with this on a daily basis, and you're building these relationships, and you're trying to teach others too, and make sure that, they're taking the correct paths in life and with Christ. So what's your advice on brotherhood and mentorship for our listeners?
Yeah. And I'll only give a small snippet into it, but anybody who wants to reach out, you guys can tag me. This is my life.
Yep.
I don't care who contacts me. Like, I love to just talk about it. Whenever I talk to people, I have to give this violent picture of it. Of if you don't have a mentor, you're literally picking up a handgun and shooting yourself in the foot, because you're putting yourself one step behind in everything on purpose, in my mind. And literally, you're just not humble enough to say, I need help. You're literally shooting yourself in the foot, because if I didn't, I think, and I won't go into all the details due to time, but I can clearly remember a time where I picked up the phone and called a guy and said, I need help with my wife. Like, I don't know what's going on. We're newly married. Like, we have a young little one at the house. And he was just like, relax. And I just remember being like, what do you mean? He's like, relax. It lasts like a few months. Your wife's in a funk because you have a newborn. She carried the child. Like, you're going to be good. And I just remember hanging up the phone and being like, I hope he's right. And it was like a week. And I remember like being like, my wife's back,
He was right.
Yeah, he was right. And so if you don't have a mentor, I believe you really are shooting yourself in the foot. So this is what I tell you.
Like, that part is that last word is such an incredible like lens into like the humility that it takes. Like, intentionally shooting yourself in the foot.
So I personally tell people that you probably need, I actually think that people need 3 different, and that you could say this person's a teacher, mentor, whatever you get to say, but I think you need 3 different style mentors, and some of them can be mixed into all of them. But I think you need somebody who's 5 years ahead of you who has done just what you just did. So it would be like, I think of a guy named Eric that I meet with weekly, who now has 2 kids. Like, I have one. Okay, he's in that process. Bought a home. Okay, financially. So now he's like, hey, watch out for that. And then I say you need someone 15 who is saying, hey, you need to look at it this way, because, the bigger picture is important. You need to be seeing this. And then I say you need a 50-year person, because they're the big picture people. They're the ones that are like laughing at you when you're tired. And they're the ones like, hey, man, I didn't, I worked 40 hours too. They're the Rambos.
Right.
But the important thing that I tell people is not to overthink it. Like, just ask somebody. Like, literally just ask somebody. There's not many people who, if you said, hey, I'll pay for breakfast, that would say no to you.
Sure.
They may have to tell you no for 2 weeks because they're busy. But I've never had anybody that's like, I don't want to go out to eat with you, Grant. And the next tip that I give to people is you have to be the most respectful person in the world. And if they say, I'll meet you at 5 a.m., it's a yes, sir. Like, I know that's early, but if they're going to give up their time with their kids, their wife, their job, like, you say yes. And then I also tell people is come with questions, come with an agenda, but then be ready to shut up. I know that sounds really mean, but like, I go meet with people, and so like the next, I'll just be vulnerable and tell people what I'm going through. Like, my wife and I are discussing having a second child. Like, that's not something we take lightly. So I've met with 2 people in the past month about it, and I come with my list, and I'm like, here's my questions. And then I literally just relax and listen. And the reason I say come with questions is, if that mentor is in your life and they leave breakfast or they leave coffee and they're like, I don't know if anything important happened, why would they want to meet with you again? But if all of a sudden you come to them and you're like, hey, I'm in let's use most men's battles. And most of the time when guys want to meet with me, it's over lust issues. If I come out of it and I'm like, hey, I want to see you do these 3 things, and then I'll meet with you again, and all of a sudden I see them instantly, they're like dealing with this stuff on their phone. They're like saying no to Netflix. I'm saying no to what's going on social media. I want to meet with them. Like, I'm like, this is what God's called me to do. So you do come with an agenda so that the important things are talked about, because nobody just wants to, people do want to just come and talk. But if you're a very successful business person or a pastor or somebody, and you give up an hour and a half of your life and nothing happens, you're not very inclined to meet again. So I always tell people, come with an agenda, come with questions, and then just be prepared to just be a sponge.
Yeah.
And I actually come with paper and pen because I want to see. I want the mentor to see what I'm writing down because I want them to be like, oh, he caught that. Oh, he wants to read the scriptures. He wants that. So then they're like more inclined. They're like, oh, Grant's taking my hour and a half very seriously. Oh, Grant wants to pay because he's respectful to my time. Like,
yeah.
So you don't overthink it. Like a lot of people are like, I don't know who to pick. Dude, there's tons of people around. Like, you ask your youth pastors, anybody who's doing it right, just ask them. And then my last tip would be if it doesn't work out, like if a mentor kind of fades, it's life. It's like, it's all right. Just keep asking for more mentors. Don't be like, the one mentor I thought was going to be the perfect fit.
The guru.
The guru. Yeah. He moved away. Now I don't have a mentor. You just go get and don't be afraid to have multiples. Like not everybody is like very knowledgeable in every subject. Like I don't, your pastor may not be the guy who's giving you financial advice. So you may have to have a financial mentor. You may have to have a spiritual mentor. You may need to have you have different mentors in different levels in life.
I love it. I know we're tight on time. So I was actually going to ask, I was going to follow up and say, what's your advice? I do have one question actually. So I know Brandon's giving me the eyes.
No, I'm giving you eye because are you about to steal the next question that I was thinking?
I might be. My first question was that I was going to ask is, do you have any advice on how to find a mentor?
Okay. Yep.
Right there it is.
There he goes.
Getting weird.
And you kind of touched on that. Just find someone who's doing it right. Yeah. And I love that. That's great advice. And then, but then the second piece to it is, so then the other way around is, do you have any advice? Because I'm just picturing the guy listening to this right now who's like, okay, this is fine, well and good, but what do I have to tell somebody? Why would anyone want to listen to what I have? What advice do you have to the guy who's sitting there in his car right now thinking this is great and I need mentoring or whatever, but I don't have either the confidence in myself or I don't believe that there's anybody who would come to me with a word. What, you know what I mean? I don't think you should force it, but what advice do you have to anybody who's I guess a little too self-conscious to think that they don't have a word to share? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'll answer both of them. The first one, literally, you just need to make it known that you want the mentor. I taught a kid once, I'm he goes to a church that's 40 people. He's I know they're not out there. And I'm they are. And I said, use social media for what it's worth. Yeah. Quit posting pictures. Just put on your status. I want a mentor in this area. His comments were listed. People are yeah, I'll call you. I'll talk to you about that. And so, man, you got to make it known that you want one. This definitely does take a level of humility. To the person who says I can't mentor, I guess I'm turning into my dad, and I'm gonna be a little bit old school and tell you I would love to be the nice guy and be you need to do it. I'm gonna be old school. You're being pretty darn selfish. God has given you and taught you things. You need to go teach somebody else. Get over yourself in a way. I love it. Proverbs is all about the wise walk with the wise. That's just the reality of it is. If you want to be a wise person, you walk with wise people. So if somebody sees you acting with wisdom and then wants you to teach them that wisdom, don't be a fool. Don't be selfish and be I'm not good enough or I'm not. Trust me, I deal with all the other, my wife says that she thinks it's crazy that I can get on stage and talk in front of 250 teenagers at camp. Trust me, there's days where I know I messed up the last time on the mic and now I'm I can't do this. I can't. Everybody has the I can'ts. There's just a lot of people that say, all right, God, show up. And so I would say to that person, just ask God to show up in the discussion and let him take over and just let God use you. And don't be selfish, to be honest with you. I
absolutely love it.
It's mentors that mentor. That's all it is. It's actually what's crazy about this whole subject is none of it's rocket science. Right. It's just people who are intentional and care.
I love it.
That's literally all it is.
And I love and I know we'll wrap it up here, but I love it. I'm sitting here staring at two of the most intentional people that I've ever met in my life. When it comes to mentoring, I really did, I've actually I've said that about both of you too before, to other people. So it's cool because I think I struggle with intentionality. So I think God put you two in my life on purpose. But I think that I don't know. This is gonna sound weird, and I hope that my thoughts can come through clearly here. But I think I love that this topic I've loved this. Like, I've loved talking to you. Like, I love that this topic is coming from you. Because, like, we asked you to come on because we know you're like a rock star in this topic.
Yeah,
like, you know, like you have you have valuable information for someone to listen to. The content's going to be great. And like, I guess like the reason why I'm bringing this is like I roomed with you for 3.5 years, and like those things that you just talked about, like I know on like an intimate level, like that, you know what I mean?
Yep,
like that you, not saying that like you're not a rock star, but I'm saying like, it's cool. 'Cause like on one hand you are like, you're my roommate. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just Grant. You're like one of just like my friends who's like, you're just Grant. But on the other hand, you're this guy who, if I had to say who, like if someone asked me who should mentor me, like, well, Grant's the guy who, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like
Appreciate
I have
that.
like both of those sides. So like, I think to answer, like to kind of answering my own question, it's like, of like, why would anyone listen to me? Like I've seen, like you even said, like through college, like I saw, like I was literally living with you when you were going through that time.
Mm-hmm.
So like I saw someone who probably thought, why would anyone want to listen to me?
Yep.
To now, A, you're giving that advice, and B, you're the person I would send people to. You know what I mean? Like,
appreciate that.
So I don't know. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, this has been great, Grant. Like I've like really enjoyed this interview.
No, I appreciate that,
and
guys.
I think the best part about it is it's in person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the cool and the other aspect of this that I really enjoy is the fact that what we're talking about is mentoring. This podcast allows us to do that to a certain extent to many people, to the 400 some people that listen to us. You are now mentoring them in that capacity.
Right.
So
100%.
for those listening, Grant said it earlier, we will attach him with this podcast, obviously. But he said, reach out to him. And this is what he loves to do. And as Taylor just said, that's what he's extremely good at. So Grant, we can't thank you enough. I can't. I know you're friends with Taylor, so Taylor's probably saying, don't thank him. He's just here because he's my friend. But I'm thanking you because I've gotten a lot out of this
I really
interview.
appreciate you guys letting me on here. Like, I'm a huge fan. I listen to you guys, so it's kind of crazy to like. I honestly, I'm like, because I compare myself to all the guys you have on, so it's just sweet to be on. So
fall right in line. So
absolutely.
I got one piece of advice for the guys who are listening. This is always is one of these days is none of these days. Eli's going to be in the corner saying, I've heard this phrase all the time, but if you want a mentor, it's not one of these days I'll get one. It's now. So pick up the phone, call that person, text them, ask them, because one of these days is definitely none of these days. So you get right on it. So.
I love it.
Bama. All right, buddy. Well, Grant, I appreciate it, man.
Really, thank you guys.
Yep.
Like,
I love it.
Huge fan of you guys. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. All right, so there you have it, guys. There was our interview with Grant, as we said at the beginning. It was pretty amazing. He's sitting back in the room now, so I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to make him feel awkward or anything. But it was a great interview.
No,
Taylor and I told you at the beginning, we got a ton out of it, especially as I sat on this side of the table starting to question the mentors in my life. Like, that's when you know it's a good interview. Like, right from the horse's mouth, he's saying it, and I'm thinking it. Taylor, you were thinking the same exact thing, I'm sure. Like, how can I better myself? And the mentors and mentorees just in my life in general. Yeah.
I mean, we've said it a billion times, but the ones that are the best interviews are the ones where I walk away and I'm like, man, I needed to hear that.
Yep.
Because like we've said a billion times, we said it last week on the episode, like we're only doing this just like that we have nothing to say. Like we're not the Andy Stanleys of the world that have something that you actually need to listen to. Like God just called us to do this, and we're out in here. So like
we're doing
the fact that like when I walk away from it, and I'm like, man, I needed to hear that. That's a good interview, and that was this one. So I'm pumped about it. Like I can't like this is gonna be going to go down as one of the favorites for sure.
Absolutely. So, guys, thanks again. Thanks for tuning in to us. Check us out. Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Taylor does everything. He does a great job with it. So check us out there. Next week, I'm not sure what we're going to have. That's the cool thing about season 2 is we have so many avenues right now of where we could pull from.
Yep.
So it's not set in stone because we just have a lot now, which is we're extremely blessed to have that opportunity and that option to begin with. So we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
See ya.